chances are that the past few years you've been watching videos regarding the social decline of people, especially young adults across you know YouTube. The topics repeat around social isolation, dating becoming worse for pretty much everyone, and also recently the declining birth rates across different nations across the world. And a few causes have been pointed to, like social media, the rising cost of living, and dating apps. And while it makes sense to think that any one of these ones are a major contributor, um, honestly, a much more significant factor that hasn't been really talked about, and maybe is a bit unpopular to point out, is working from home. Ever since COVID, the measures put in place in the workplace, and even with universities and colleges, uh, they have made it harder for young people and young adults to socialize, because obviously staying in your room for 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, isn't exactly painting a social person. And while some people like to think that work or studying is just for that, uh, historically before COVID, it has been shown to be an actual effective social environment or social setting for young people to make friends and also date, either directly or indirectly. And yeah, you may be annoyed at my proposal of how to make the situation better, but essentially, my proposal isn't even going to the office 5 days a week. It wouldn't be returning to the 100% traditional version, because that would be a bit too much, honestly. But yeah, a good balance would be 2 days in the office, and even then, it would be only enforced to those that are most affected by this social decline. So, really, people in their 20s and 30s, and of course, those who are married or have kids would be excluded from this enforcement, because obviously they're not in need of this subtle but significant social setting. And yeah, in this video, I'll be reacting to a video made by Galloway in collaboration with Derek Thompson, called "Why Young Men Choose to Be Alone." Now, Scott asks some relevant questions that explore the topic, and Derek provides his answers to these questions. And some of these answers are fair enough, but some of them just don't seem critically thought enough. Like they were just rehashed from popular talking points in this online discussion. And yeah, it's kind of annoying because if you actually dig into them, you kind of get a feeling that they're kind of vague, they're kind of abstract, they don't actually mirror reality, and they don't go into details. So I go a bit hard on those ones. Anyway, whatever the case, hopefully you get to see a different perspective. For someone who, like myself, who has experienced both types of work, you know, I spent time in the office before COVID and at home after COVID. So yeah, I feel like I have a bit more balanced perspective on this one. So yeah, let's go on to the video.
All right, so let's bust right into it. Again, you've coined the idea of the antisocial century, which is a trend we cover a lot here. Your argument isn't that people are isolated against their will, it's that solitude became comfortable, cheap, and abundant, and people are actively opting for it. In other words, the problem may be that we don't feel lonely enough. How do you think this happened? Set the table here. What's the environment and the atmospherics for what you're calling the antisocial century?
Yeah, that's just one of the most ridiculous takes out there in these current past few years when it comes to this loneliness epidemic. I mean, obviously, people aren't opting into it. I know it can look interesting to view it as something that people have a unfortunate tendency to go towards in this terms of lifestyle, or just staying in, not putting much effort, not putting much risk into trying to make social connections happen. But that's obviously not the case. We are social creatures. We would obviously try in this new era of post-COVID of trying to make friends. It is something that we like doing. Um, I think it's a bit too lazy to just paint it as uh, we just we just value convenience over everything else. That's not the case.
Every indicator again of socializing is going down. According to the American Time Use Survey, the average American spends 25% less time socializing presently in the real world. The American Time Use Survey asks about how often people attend or host parties. Americans under 25, so Gen Z, spend 70% less time at parties than they did just 26 years ago.
The reasons this guy explains for what is causing this decrease in socialization aren't really on point. Like, one reason he says is, social media, technology. We like to stay on our phones. It's just easier than going outside. So that's something that he thinks um, is what's causing this, and we just fall into it. We don't try to make efforts to make friends outside, but that's honestly just a lazy and superficial way to look at it, because that just assumes that people don't try to make social connections in their spare time, right? So they don't try to go to clubs, they don't try to go to hobbies, third spaces. Like, obviously, we are social creatures. We would try to make our situations better when it comes to our social aspects. It doesn't take much to just search online, okay, clubs near me or a gym near me, and try to join that and just try to see where it goes, or just hobbies or clubs near me. But yeah, this isn't quite hard to do. So uh, it is expected that a person, especially in this post-COVID era, tries to fill up that social aspect of their lives with these nearby activities that they can do. But the thing about them is that they're not so reliable um, in terms of building social connections. And that's something that no one really ever goes into detail about. Um, yeah, and I'll talk about it later, but essentially, hobbies and third spaces are not so effective. They're just inconsistent by nature. You don't have to see the same people there, and they don't have to go there all the time because it is optional. So, by that sense, there's some inconsistent nature in trying to establish just kind of this long-term social interaction, the repeated social interactions between them, which is needed to form friendships, or in case of the opposite sex, relationships. And yeah, also, this is going to be a bit unpopular, but yeah, I believe I already mentioned it in this video, and that is the working from home and also distance learning, which is the thing in universities and colleges, is contributing to this current social decline, because those are underrated social settings when it comes to allowing people to have repeated social exposure, which is what humans are designed for and really require when it comes to building social connections with each other. And yeah, working from home, distance learning means that you're in your house pretty much a lot of time, and that's just not good for social connection. So you realize that the value of you realize the estimated value of hobbies and third spaces as not being so great. Then you take away the workspace, and yeah, you don't have many social avenues as a young adult to make social connections, especially in this globalized era where people migrate from their communities after high school to study, and then again to find work. So we're just taking numerous avenues, not numerous avenues, but we're taking the main avenue, which is underrated, which is the workplace, from young people. So it gets, of course, naturally harder and harder to form relationships.
And why should we care? What are the downsides of a culture becoming distinctly more antisocial? And also, are there any upsides?
Yeah, there are absolutely upsides. Let's start there. In many cases, as with so much modernity, we're victims of our own success. People have more freedom than they used to have. They're less bound by the strictures of tradition. One place that people used to gather has been church or synagogue or temple. But there are lots of religious traditions that are bigoted, that are illiberal, that hold people back from being the individuals that they could be. So, in many cases, you could say that the antisocial century is about the triumph of individualism.
This is actually true. I mean, if you look it up, if you Google it, in the 1990s, the weekly attendance across the US for young adults also was around a fourth. So that was either weekly or at least a similar enough frequency of attendance. And yeah, I guess you could say it was somewhat of a social hub, a place for people to meet, a social community. And you know, it's almost as good as the workplace, but not so much because it is once a week, or for some people it's not even once a week. Um, and it was, or even for like an hour or two, depending on how long mass is typically. And during mass you can't really speak. It's not like in the workplace where you can just chit chat, whatever. If you don't have anything to do, you just have to straight up be concentrated on mass, be silent, um, and just kneel and sit and pray for pretty much the whole hour, right? So that's not really great. And of course, there's before and after, but even that, probably speaking, is going to be like 30 minutes before and after overall. Because yeah, it's just what you expect. And yeah, also, people aren't choosing to stay home more nowadays. It's rather due to the still popular working arrangement, which still is lingering from the COVID implementations, and that is working from home. And at the forefront, on the onset, it looked like it was such a dream thing, right? You don't have to commute, you can chill in your house, you don't have to pretend like you're busy more than you actually are. And yeah, there's no commute costs. You don't have to wake up earlier. And yeah, of course, there are a lot of benefits. I'm not disputing that, but there is a subtle hidden cost socially on a societal level that some people are not willing to admit, or some people are not even aware of. All right, because it's just the new reality. It's just under your nose for so long that you don't even bother considering whether it's an issue or not. And yeah, um, essentially, it is not as effective as working at the office, where instead of um, being around other people, you're just stuck in your room for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And it's not like it's just, oh, why don't you just try making friends or just try messaging them? It's not the same thing as being around them physically. Like, we are humans, we are physical, we are physical creatures. Obviously, we're not AI. That's and that means that we need a physical situation to form social connection. That has been the case for the vast majority of human life, for the vast majority of societies. We lived in tribes of around 150, and of course that meant that we had a tight-knit community. We knew each other. We had spaces that we would incur with each other on a regular basis, and that will allow us to get a better gauge of each other. And that was, and the best mirror of that in society before COVID was, yeah, the workplace, because you frequently encounter people your own age, and that will just allow you to be to more easily form connections, because that's what we like as humans, familiarity. And we get to be more relaxed. There's no pressure, and that's the thing. It's like with these hobbies and third spaces, more days, Um, it's just that now, since people are more socially depraved, I'm sorry to use that word, but that is the case. People can go to these hobbies with the intention of just socializing, which is kind of goes against the point of socializing. You're not supposed to force it. And yeah, people can kind of feel that vibe, and people can even try and attend hobbies that they're not really into, just for the sake of more social opportunity. But yeah, that again reinforces the point that it's more obvious that you're not really enjoying the activity. So people kind of feel that from you, and that ironically goes against the success of whether you can socialize well in that kind of environment. Because if you're not enjoying yourself, people feel that, and yeah, obviously it's gonna be harder to try and form connection with you. And yeah, um, yeah, that's essentially it. It's regarding to just close off this point of the church. It's just a slightly better version of what we have right now, which is just staying indoors, but it's not the same thing as in the office.
But the triumph of individualism has its own costs. If you're disconnected from your family, if you focus on yourself rather than on your social community, if you focus on your career rather than on building a family, well, these can all give you a sense of power. But in the long run, what are you left with? A really ample bank account and a not so ample social life.
Like, I'm not sure what he means here. Like, disconnected, disconnected from family. Like, it's quite easy to message your family regularly, and it's not realistic to, of course, visit your family in this globalized era where people move away from their families when they go to study and when they go to work. And yeah, even then, young people feel more satisfied with on-family friendships because, in a sense, I'm not trying to devalue, of course, family relationships. That those are important, but it's more authentic because they didn't need to depend on you being family in order to value you as someone that they want to be connected to. They want to maintain their friendships with. So um, that's why I think even if there is the online ability to be connected to your family, of course, A, it's online, and B, when you're an adult, and even in your teenage years, so in your young adolescence, your young adult years, you just value inherently non-family relationships more because um, yeah, you just prove more that there's a friendship to be had, that there's a connection to be had. Like, what does this mean? Yourself over the social community. Like, while some people are super ambitious and they study all the time to upgrade their skills, or they work overtime to really try and advance their careers or focus on any other interests in their life, like for most people, these different aspects of life don't have to get into the way of the other. So they don't get into the way of socialization. It's not by choice that we decide to not have this more social aspect of our lives be more invested, because it's just harder. As mentioned, it's not just easy to make friends as an adult, especially in this post-COVID years of just depending on hobbies, third spaces. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like with hobbies, I'll just list a few reasons off the top here, but essentially they're not so effective and reliable as a means to form just really even any type of social connection that's more appropriate for your age. Because honestly, connections your age just intuitively and realistically make sense. Because yeah, you just have that same energy, you have the same kind of mindset, same kind of stage of life that you can relate to. And yeah, essentially, uh, these hobbies make it so that by nature, hobbies are catered to the different interests of humans, and humans have, of course, over the past decades, um, have the ability to have more options, right? Liberty isn't necessarily always a good thing. In this context, it's not really good because by the virtue of so many hobbies being available, it's probably less likely that two people that are compatible with each other when it comes to friendships or dating are just less likely to meet each other. And another reason is that hobbies, again, even like church, they're not really meant to, like the nature of their activities doesn't lead to a optimal social environment over the long run, because you're just focused on the activity itself. So especially if it's like a sports based or a physical based activity, which is, I gather, most of the hobbies nowadays, guess what? You're just focused on the activity yourself. You're not really in a good opportunity to talk to others. And even then, it's after the session, people are tired because obviously if it's physically based, then you're naturally going to be tired. You're not in a, you don't feel like socializing because you just want to rest. You just want to go home and rest. So that ironically is not a good way to conduct these social interactions. And yeah, just people are in a hurry. Even then, like I go to the gym, and typically after a class, people don't even hang around. They just go away because yeah, it's just a bit of a weird space. Like there's no like common long-term over the day setting that allows people to just be near each other and just spontaneously create these conversations or social interactions. It's just, you go into activity such as class, and then you get out, and that's it. If you stay, it's not really conducive. Like it ironically points out a way that socializing needs to be done, and that is like long-term social setting throughout the day. Because if you force it, right, when there's nothing else to do, when there's no, like in the workplace, there's work, and then you can just take a break and just talk to others. In this case, there's nothing really to lean on. It's just purely let's just focus on talking, and that's not really a conducive way. Like that's why school, university, and the workplace are just more ideal settings, because they allow for this kind of low pressure, but yeah, long-term social setting for people to just start conversations and not think that the reason why they have to start conversations is because they're forced into it. It's just like some time to fill the gap in the overall activity, whether it's studying or working. So yeah, hobbies don't really have that. It's a different structure essentially. And yeah, third spaces also are a shit way to make friends as an adult. Like going to a bar is by yourself, it's just weird. If you try to talk to people, it's just weird. I think people they just exaggerate just how easy it is to make friends or to chat up a girl at a bar. It just doesn't really make sense. Like you don't know the other person, they don't know you, yet you're just supposed to come up as a cool person to talk to, and that's just not, again, it just proves the fact that people aren't really wired that way. That's we can just be so excited to form friendships. Like think about school and how you form friendships. It's not like instant, right? You have to keep at it in order for people to feel comfortable around you. It's a repeated exposure that needs to be in place. That's the thing with school, that's the thing with university, that's the thing with the office. And again, there's no like onus, there's no expectation for a social conversation to be had, right? The main activity is school, the learning. The main activity in the office is the work. So there's kind of like this excuse for why people may want to talk to you, right? Because it's just like hey, they have a break, maybe they have a question about work, and then that's where the social aspect can occur. With bars, it's just like straight up. It's a bit unnatural. Like, why would you be interested in someone uh, straight up? Like, there's no conversation, there's no activity in which you can like share your thoughts on, like in school. Like, if there's a class coming on, and you're just hanging out before class starts, and that's where you can just say, hey, what do you think about this subject? Oh, do you feel nervous about this test? There's something already there to talk about. Whereas in third spaces and hobbies, it's not really the case. It feels a bit more forced. So that's why it's not, ironically, a good place to make friends as an adult. Again, like the previous point, this is just a false assumption. I mean, most people don't choose to ignore opportunities to date. There just aren't. All right, there's a difference there. And the dating avenue, the dating venue right now is dating apps, which isn't conducive to reliably allowing people to see whether they actually match or not, whether they're compatible in terms of values and attraction. It's just a terrible way to date. So it's not so more that we purposely choose career over family. It's that we can only choose career over family, and even then, career with AI is not looking so promising. But that's kind of besides the point. He's just mentioning here that you know the choice that people make is the bad one, when in fact there is no actual choice.
But in the long run, what are you left with? A really ample bank account and a not so ample social life. So the reason why I think this is important, let's talk about two reasons. One that's very individual, happiness, and another that's more macro, which is politics. Individually, it seems pretty clear, according to research that's been done by a lot of different people, especially at the University of Chicago, that people, how to put this, over demand introversion. If you ask people how much time do you want to spend alone, people actually tend to want to spend a lot of time alone. They often feel burned out. They want to, watch their own Netflix and scroll their own TikTok in bed or on a couch. But there's some really interesting studies, for example, that have asked people in commutes in Chicago and New York. They've said, do you think you want to talk to a stranger during a commute? And pretty much everyone says, fuck no. Like, please don't make me talk to a stranger on my commute. That sounds like something close to hell. But then they incentivize it. They offer some people some money to participate in a trial, and they randomize some people to talk to strangers. At the end of this train ride, they ask people, the ones who talked to strangers and the ones who didn't talk to strangers, how do you feel right now? How happy do you feel? And the people who have been, in some cases, forced, a little bit maybe against their will, to socialize just a little bit more than they might have initially demanded, are consistently happier than those who spent time just locked in to themselves. And so, one conclusion from this, I think, is that we over demand solitude. In one day, that's not particularly significant.
I'm not sure in what time period he gets this assessment from, because if it was before COVID, then sure, it makes sense because you spend a lot of time in the office, a lot of time outdoors, and a lot of time with other people. And, past a certain point, it just becomes a bit annoying, becomes a bit of a drag. And it's not all that positive, of course. It's still decent in terms of the overall social contribution that the workplace provided. As can be seen from COVID and the implementations, how everything else that preceded it showed that it was just negative to remove that workplace, even in its traditional 5-day a week at the office version. But yeah, it just goes to show that even then, if there was a bit of an urge to not spend as much time with people then, because you're already doing it somewhat, that there was that feeling. But yeah, anyways, back to the point. If he meant it after COVID, then that doesn't make sense, since there's too much loneliness going on, and of course that's impacting social metrics such as friendships and dating, and also mental health. rates, such as depression, anxiety, and so forth. It's kind of weird to use that study as a point because socializing with strangers that you probably will never meet anyway at a sufficient rate in the future is going to be naturally viewed as a waste of time for some people. So it's a bit weird comparing it to, um, socializing with people that you already know. So I'm not sure that's the most appropriate study there. And also, there's the potential of just looking weird in public for just starting a conversation with a stranger because it's just unnatural. But on the flip side, it does show that even with a bit of socializing, even in a somewhat forced manner, especially with a stranger, that it does, you know, bring some happiness to some people generally because we are social creatures. Um, but yeah, if we were to switch this from talking to a stranger to talking to people at your workplace, well, there's this kind of similar effect. And people are, not you're not going to get along with everyone at your office, but you will be friends with at least a few. That's just natural. Humans are generally similar. We do have our special interests here and there, but that's kind of the nice thing about being humans. Like, we have to be relatable. If not, we're not really uh, able to be in a social group. And yeah, having that regular social interaction with your colleagues does help with your happiness. And yeah, hence with my reoccurring point that the office is an undervalued setting when it comes to the social needs of young adults. So by going through the inconvenience of going to work at the office, you do get a social return, which arguably is much higher than the short-term convenience um, of staying at home and working from home 5 days a week. Even if we use the original scenario of working 5 days a week at the office. He says near the end that we over demand solitude, and again, this is just a recurring point. I'm gonna just disagree. That's just not true. It's forced upon us. Working from home, of course, you're going to feel more lonely. Um, when it's 5 days a week, it's forced upon you. You don't really choose it. With 8 hours a day, you're just stuck to your computer, and yeah, it's just terrible.
More broadly, there's some really interesting research that's come out of Denmark on politics and the fact that men in particular who self-identify as being more socially isolated tend to not experience politics as something that affects or touches their community, but rather something that they see as kind of entertainment. And the word or the phrase that has been used to describe their approach to politics is need for chaos. They have a higher need for chaos. What they want is not politics and policy that solves the world, that fixes the world. What they prefer is politics that is chaotic for its own good. And so I think that a world with more and more solitude is not only going to make us sadder in our finite, light of consciousness on this earth, but also it's going to make politics much worse, and that's going to make the world worse as well.
When people, I guess men more so, feel more isolated, it makes sense why they want politics to be an instrument for chaos, right? They don't feel valued by friends because they don't have as many, by community because they don't have much. So they feel, in a sense, jaded and angry, making them not care about society as society doesn't care for them. Because that's the perception, right? And I think this especially affects men because with dating, most men feel like they're left out of the game. I know women have it rough too, but if we're going to be honest, at least they have more options. At least they know that they are more valued in that sense because they just get more matches. But again, not ideal for either gender. So yeah, that leads to a bigger sense of negativity towards society.
I want to come back to politics in a second, but I'll put forward a thesis. You say we're less happy, which I think there's a ton of evidence, including you live longer when you're more social. But let's talk a little bit, let's explore the downside. I'll put forward a thesis. I worry that isolation is directly correlated to, I'm going to use a non academic term, going crazy. And that is, if you put a mammal alone, you isolate any mammal, an orca, a dog, it starts to go crazy. And that other people and relationships create guardrails and checkpoints, make you feel better about something you express in real life, something you're worried about. It helps soothe those fears. And that other relationships and people are guardrails against starting to believe that, oh, mRNA vaccines alter your DNA, or believing that, oh, this, crazy theory, or immigrants are taking my jobs. It just feels as if people start to lose not only connection, but the Overton window expands beyond something that is healthy. That, especially young men, we literally start to go, I mean, for lack of a better term, very antisocial in not a good way. Are we going crazier, more prone to conspiracy theory, more anger, more angry, more, and you talked about this. I hadn't thought about the fact that young men aren't more political. It sounds like you're saying they want some sort of stimulation that maybe they're not getting if they were socializing. But talk about the mental impact of spending way more time alone.
It's honestly not a debate that loneliness just contributes to a worse well being and a worse quality of life. Some people online, if you go on forums and look at the comment sections of certain YouTube videos, they cope and they say that loneliness is fine, that people are toxic, that you need to depend less on others for your own happiness. But of course, that's just absolute cope for justifying their current forced lifestyle. It's no wonder that as a species, as social as humans, who have depended on each other for hundreds of thousands of years, that we have developed a biological circuitry to depend on socializing to make us happy. And I understand why people want to cope, especially within the topic of dating and the gender wars of how both sides hate each other. And yeah, that's why they want to act like they're fine without the other, but that is just cope, as we need each other for a more fulfilling life. This is quite true. This also applies to friendships, but also is especially the case with relationships. The fact that someone cares about you, is there to listen to your struggles and doubts, to guide you, to pick you up when you feel down. That does a lot over the long term for a person's mental health and development as an adult.
We sometimes think about making friends as something that's just like going out for lunch, like an activity that exists in like single units. But friendship is more like a muscle that you build. In many cases, it can take tens, dozens of hours just spending time with another person to truly form a deep relationship with them.
This is so true. I mean, people need to be familiar with each other to be comfortable, obviously. They need that repeated social exposure to, start like letting their guard down and not be so pressured to have a friendship right away, right? It feels more genuine and they can, gauge whether they're actually compatible with the other person. And this is also a reason why these hobbies and third spaces in this post-COVID world, they're unironically not the best spaces to form friendships. Because, a lot of people who go to them, especially in this post-COVID era, they obviously would have are a bit socially isolated, right? They kind of naturally want um, more of a connection with others, but that naturally means that they're they put themselves under pressure, and they kind of also put others under pressure with wanting to form a relationship, form some sort of connection, and yeah, that just doesn't work at all, because if you try to force a social connection, that kind of is going to go all the other way. It's kind of counterintuitive, but yeah, some people just can't help it, right? And yeah, there needs to be a long-term setting for social exposure at a low pressure to be done over and over again for these kinds of social connections to be reliably made. Yeah, and that's also why dating apps are not so effective, because they're so high pressure in how they're conducted. If a date, however unlikely it is to materialize, because you know yes, you do match each other over the app. You see photos of each other. You get a sense of kind of their personality and what kind of hobbies they have and what they like to do on a daily basis. But that's just through app, and that still, even if you agree to a date and you go on it, you still, in your heart, you don't have a really good idea of what they're like, because obviously you actually haven't met them in real life over an extended amount of time. So it's just going from pretty much zero, or well, of course, close to zero, because you have established some sort of connection online, but again, it is online, it's not physical. So if you do go ahead and try to meet with them, um, the vibe might be off. And again, it's just a lot at once. It's supposed to be a special kind of meeting, right? Special kind of date, right? It's a date. So yeah, there's quite a bit of high pressure on it to go well. I know, obviously, both people should go with the operation with the mindset that it's just be treated lightly, like nothing. But honestly, that's not realistic, because with the notion of a date, with the notion of meeting someone, potentially going intimate, or going further into a relationship, it is quite high pressure. So there's just no actual real life work done before this type of event. So obviously it's not conducive to um, a probably good date. So yeah, that's why that contributes to the reason why online dating is not so great, because it kind of goes against the natural way, the more effective way that two people can kind of gauge each other before they commit to an actual date. And on the date, they don't have to like continually talk or kind of feel pressure to kind of impress the other person, um, because yeah, that's kind of like the intended nature of such a medium. But yeah, yeah, again, that's not how most relationships in the vast history of humankind were formed. Most of our lives were in tribes. I think it was like 150 people usually. And yeah, that meant that there were tight knit communities where people knew each other. There was repeated physical proximity to some people. And yeah, obviously, that means that there were light social interactions over the long term.
Spending time with another person to truly form a deep relationship with them. And so if you lock yourself out of that, if you say, I'm going to have fewer friends and I'm going to spend less time with them, which is something we absolutely see among Gen Z, they have the fewest number of friends of any generation that's been studied in the last few decades. Where is that really going to cost them? They might not, people who are isolated like this, they might not feel like it costs them so much on a typical Tuesday or Wednesday. They wake up, they maybe, do a workout, they go to work, they come home, they gamble a little bit on Kalshi, they watch some Netflix, they go to sleep. Maybe they feel like that's a perfectly stimulating life.
It makes the implication that this type of person, this lonely person, chose this lifestyle, when in fact that's not the case. People do try to make friends at hobbies, third spaces, and whatnot, but they're just not reliable means to do so. I've already repeated this, but I have to keep repeating it, because that's essentially the main theme of his position, which is people purposely do this. People purposely choose this lonely, solitary lifestyle when it's obviously not the case. We're not wired for it. We try to get out of it, but it's just not an easy way out in this post-COVID era.
So, for example, if you have a growing economy where everyone's getting richer and like an early industrial revolution, but a four-string quartet is still a four-string quartet, still a four-string quartet, which is not being made more labor productive by any kind of technology, then going to see a symphony or going to see an opera is going to get much more expensive than anything else. So the cost disease essentially says that as technology changes an economy, parts of that economy that are more labor intensive are going to increase in cost relative to the rest of the economy. To put that in simpler terms, as our phones and digital entertainment has gotten dirt cheap, the physical world has gotten relatively expensive. It is cheap to stay at home on your couch and watch Netflix, and cheaper still to forget Netflix, not even pay for a subscription, and instead just scroll through TikTok. That is a zero additional cost experience. Going to a rooftop deck in Beverly Hills to order, let's say, 3 drinks between you and a friend, that could cost you $100 even before you talk about maybe Ubering out there and Ubering back.
This is one of the biggest bullshit reasons why people don't want to go out. This guy describes hanging out with friends as an unreasonably expensive activity, which is honestly not the case. Right? Getting a pint or a beer costs like £5 or $7. Grabbing a bite at a nearby lower to mid-class restaurant or a fast food place costs like £15 or $20. Like these things can happen like once or twice a month. They're not expensive for most people. And yeah, of course, he brings out the most ridiculous example. Like, he says, imagine going to a rooftop bar in Beverly Hills to order a martini or some shit. Like, of course, that's gonna cost insanely high, but that's not the resort that most people have to go to when thinking about socializing outside with people. Like, the real problem is the lack of friends. And the real, also intertwined problem is that most of these bars and restaurants are near downtown, where most offices are located. And since work from home is still a lingering significant working arrangement for young white collar workers, the scenario of hanging out at lunch or after work is not there anymore. And of course, doesn't have to be the case that you just socialize with your friends there, but how you realistically get those friends, at a young age as an adult, is realistically through work. And then you can, go elsewhere. But yeah, essentially, again, the reoccurring problem is working from home, which has been the case since COVID.
If the first half of the 20th century was about technology mastering the physical world, the first half of the 21st century has been about escaping the physical world because it is so regulated. Right? We've made it much harder to build things. We made it harder to build houses, and so young people can't afford them, and then therefore they can't start families, and maybe there's a decline in socialization because of that. If it's harder to build things in the physical world, then the physical world will mechanically become more expensive, and so people will stay inside. And rather than take risks in the world of flesh and blood, try to meet girls, try to meet guys, instead the risks that they take are the cheap thrill risks of staying on your couch and betting on Kalshi or some sports betting app.
So yeah, similar to the economic bullshit that I just pointed out, that is supposedly acting as an economic barrier to people generally socializing and going out, rising house prices, they do not affect the core issue of dating and family making. It is the dating apps, right? They fill up the social void from the significant disappearance of the workplace, an underestimated social setting for friendships and dating to take place. A guy or a gal doesn't think to themselves on weekend, geez, the housing prices have increased again this year. Time to stay inside. Nobody thinks that way. Anyways, the reason they stay inside is because they have less friends.
Let's talk a little bit about solves or solutions. I mean, it just feels, whether it's remote work, a decline in church attendance, people remote schooling, COVID, where we got very used to isolation, and then uh, I would argue the thing we haven't discussed, it's just almost an indomitable foe, is that arguably 40% of the S&P has an economic incentive to figure out a way for you to every day spend one more second on a screen and one less with other people. What could we do? I think people are going to nod their heads and say, all right, it just makes a lot of sense. If you're a parent and you see what happens when your kid isn't around other kids for an extended period of time, we can't even take a vacation without having other kids around our kids. They just become so awful. What are some of the solves here? Or if you were advising around public policy or even around parenting, how do we address this?
It's funny because Scott did mention potential causes behind the current social decline amongst young people, but he is not so sure about it himself, at least on from this video, from what I can see, because yeah, he is just questioning it, right? But yeah, both students and young workers are suffering from working from home and also distance learning. And the main one, of course, being working from home. As you can see from the stats here on the screen, it is still a significant trend, especially amongst some top industries such as finance, such as professional services, such as IT. That of course takes away the social setting to host the development and maintenance of realistic friendships and dating avenues. While social media does play somewhat of a role, it has been introduced in the early 2010s, and young people were not having these major issues. And as you can see by the graph, if you check out that time period, there wasn't really a significant increase in sexlessness. And I think even in some cases it was going down. And yeah, that being used as a social proxy, we see that in that time period there was barely an increase, but in between 2018 and 2022, when COVID hit in around 2019, 2020, the countermeasures were put in place, and that's when the rates went up. So, in all honesty, it's like it's like the new TV. When the TV in the 1900s, when people wanted to chill at home and didn't have anything planned out, they just spent time inside, which in certain amounts of time it's fine. But it's the fact that we have smaller groups of friends, that we are more lonely, and that's the reason why we don't go out often and we just feel worse. Social media just exacerbated the hole in the social heart of the post-COVID era across a lot of countries around the world. It itself is not the problem, it's just the band-aid, if you will, to the current gap in the social landscape that we have right now.
The first step is recognizing exactly what's being lost, right? When a society is pushing people to take only financial risks and to not take social risks.
What is this guy on about? Like, not a lot of people are even looking to make financial risks, like starting a business. So what is he on about? He's just making up shit to make it look like he's making a profound diagnosis and prescription on this issue that affects us all. And if we focus on social risks, again, that's not a reliable way for young people to make connections. Going to a bar by yourself, because again, you probably don't have many friends now, and chatting up an attractive woman is probably going to end up you getting looked at weird and told to fuck off. Because that's not how most romantic relationships start in the vast majority of humankind, right? Like, we used to live in small tribes of like 150 people, and by that extent there was a lot of familiarity and repeated low pressure exposure to each other, which is just going to lead to us naturally wanting to form relationships that way, not just through sudden glance across the bar like in a movie or something, and think that's how it all started. That's an unrealistic way for two people to form a connection. It's just way too high pressure.
You are hollowing out the virtues that make strong collective life possible. You're hollowing out trust, curiosity, forgiveness, generosity. Like, that's the receipt of our behavior. Right? People today, even if maybe they choose to smoke, they do so knowing the risk. They don't need to see or not see an ad for like Camel cigarettes to know what the relationship between smoking and their long-term lung health is. So a huge part of this for me is just like public awareness.
Social health is inappropriate to view as a personal responsibility, at least in this context of post-COVID, because what makes one's social life is the social setting that they are put under. Again, working from home is just a bad social setting. It's nothing really personal as a young person, so you can't really choose which company to work for, with a major emphasis on its ensuring people work at the office. because in these days where the labor market is ridiculous and there's very little leverage for most people looking for jobs, most employees, there's just not enough leverage, especially with AI. So people don't have the leverage, the luxury to choose companies that offer a more hybrid role in working. And it's not like obesity or smoking where the outcome is 100% on the individual experiencing the problem, because socializing involves two external components that are outside the individual's control. The first one is the social setting, and the other one is other people, who are likely the same as an individual, of course, in that their social setting is not conducive to long-term social health. So yeah, hobbies and third spaces are not reliable social settings based on various factors that I mentioned earlier. One being the inconsistent nature of people attending. I'm not sure if I listed many others, but another one is just the nature of it is like you just spend, if it's like an exercise or sports-based activity, most of it naturally is going to be spending time doing the actual activity and not talking. And even then, people are generally in a hurry. Like at my gym, if I go to a class, people don't spend much time before the class. Like they arrive like 2 minutes early or 1 minute early, and then after the class, they are in a rush to go somewhere else or just do more workout. So yeah, it's just not a conducive way to socialize with people. And it's not like the workplace or in school and class where there's just a good amount of filler time between when it's just in class when the teacher is speaking and then they tell you to do something, and then you can speak with others in the meantime. And yeah, it just also, yeah, since it's a hobby, it's optional. People can flake. People may feel lazy and not go, or people may have other chores that they want to attend to and skip that session. And yeah, it's just generally not a reliable way for people to make social connections. So in conclusion, the guy being interviewed has no idea what he's talking about. He's just regurgitating superficial talking points that has been thrown around by others in this online discussion in the topics of isolation and dating. And they may sound like they explain what's going on with the current social landscape, but they don't really go into detail. It's just very high level, and it's just with a bit of inspection and relating it to reality and experience, they just fall apart quite easily. This is just part of a series of videos from me in which I talk about different topics about the social health of young adults across the world, and react to different people who just honestly give out bad diagnoses about the issue, which is honestly just tiring and deserves some review and critique. My solution for improving the social health of young workers, as I mentioned various points in this video, is just to explain the unpopular truth behind why working from home has been quite devastating, and the government should, think about it more carefully and figure out why this social epidemic started, strangely enough, at the start of COVID, and not look at other scapegoats such as social media. And I know they put in some social media bans. I think in the UK they put in some bans for teenagers, like those under 16, and that can make sense because and I haven't delved too much into it, but on the surface it just does make sense because there are some content online that is just not appropriate for people of that age. And look, I'm not advocating for a 5-day return to the office, but rather a 2-day at the office policy. I think that's a good balance of just having enough social exposure, social interaction, and just feeling happier in that sense, but also just spending more time, at least some time at home, so you don't have to have your social battery drained out too often, especially as an introvert. And this would have to be applicable to the demographic that needs it the most. So I wouldn't say that employees of all ages, of all qualities, or all characteristics have to attend the office 2 days a week, but more so those the demographic that needs it the most. So single people between 20s and 30s. So if you have a kid already or you're married, you don't have to be required, obviously, because you're not in need for it. And yeah, in this video series, I debunk various popular arguments such as hobbies and third spaces by pointing out disadvantages that people don't talk about enough when figuring out, the more reliable, effective social setting for positive social health. And yeah, if you agree or disagree with me, just comment either way, because I'm not afraid of any counter arguments, because I'm just that confident that this is a major reason as to the social decline amongst young adults. And yeah, it's just obvious from a time perspective if you really think about it. All right, that's all. I hope you enjoy and have a good day.